Hello, welcome back to the Underhand Free Throw. I am Simon, and today me and my co-host Ian are going to be talking about the San Antonio Spurs and how their rebuild is going. Similar to how we talked about the Orlando Magic in our last video, we're going to talk about the Spurs draft pick situation. We're going to talk about the players that they have that we really like. We're going to talk about the players that they have that we think that they could trade for more options to rebuild this team. And ultimately, both of us would really love to see the Spurs turn this team around in the next couple of years so that Greg Popovich can have one last playoff run before he retires. If you like this kind of content, and I have a sneaking suspicion that you do, if you're watching a rebuilding video about the San Antonio Spurs in early December, then feel free to like and subscribe because we have lots more where that came from.
So I think next we're going to talk about another team that we think is fun and bad, and that is the San Antonio Spurs, the 6-18 San Antonio Spurs, the 29th ranked offense and the 30th ranked defense. There are 30 teams in the NBA for all of you doing the math as you listen to this. So that's not very good at either of those two sort of important things for playing basketball. What are your initial thoughts on the Spurs beginning to the season and just sort of, more big picture Spurs stuff?
Well, the Spurs are currently on an 11-game losing streak, pending a game tonight. But yeah, I mean they're doing their job well, right? They're giving the young guys some run. They're losing a lot of games. Unlike the Orlando Magic that we just talked about earlier, though, the Spurs still do have some veterans. So this team might be a little bit more interesting to talk about in terms of like trades that are going to potentially happen this year. We'll see if they end up moving that direction. But they do have some exciting young guys to talk about as well. So with the Spurs, similar to how we did it with the Magic, we'll talk about their draft picks first. So currently the Spurs have a Hornets pick this year, which is top 16 protected. So very unlikely to transfer unless something crazy happens. But they also have their own pick. That's the exciting one. And then next year, in perpetuity, they have their own pick. They haven't traded away any of their first. 2025, they have a conditional Bulls first round pick, top 10 protected, and then they have an unprotected Atlanta Hawks pick. And they also have the Hawks 2027 from the DeJounte Murray trade. So
not bad.
It's mostly going to be how bad they can be with when it really comes down to what their draft picks and draft assets are going to look like for the next few seasons as they rebuild. But who knows? I mean, maybe conditions in Atlanta will implode and Trey will ask out or something crazy like that. And those Atlanta picks will look good too coming up in the future.
Yeah. The Spurs, they're interesting in the way in which they're bad this year, because they still play a semi-functional offense, but they basically have stopped having any rim pressure. Once Keldon Johnson started struggling, or teams figured out how they wanted to guard Keldon Johnson, and without much of a pick and roll partner to pair with Jakob Poeltl, they're kind of like living and dying right now by with jump shots, specifically Devin Vassell jump shots being sort of the thing that's working for them.
And he's making them.
Yeah. They don't draw fouls. They're a really, really poor defensive rebounding team. They attack the offensive glass hard, which also means they're a pretty poor, one of the worst defensive transition teams in the NBA. So that's an easy way to let a team score. I think they're giving up like 16 points per game in transition, which is that's bad. So like you watch, I always wondered, like, how will Greg Popovich go about constructing a tanking offense and defense? And it seems to be like really specific, like let's do this strategically, which guarantees we'll be bad at this. And so it's what it feels like a little bit in San Antonio. Obviously, there's a super low level of talent that you can point to, but I think they're also doing some things strategically to sort of grease the wheels and ensure they don't overachieve, because they looked pretty good to start the season. I mean, maybe I watched too many Timberwolves games. They beat us twice, and then they were 5-2, I think, to start the year, and then they've won one game since that.
Well, if you want me to be completely honest, this is maybe maybe I'm not giving the Spurs enough credit, but I think a lot of that was conditioning. They came out of the gates and they were young and athletic. They ran super hard, and a lot of teams were just, I mean, the most striking game was the Philadelphia 76ers when they lost to the Spurs. I think it was the third or fourth game of the season. They just looked like they did not have the legs to keep up with the young guys. And, obviously a lot of veteran players and teams play themselves into shape. So obviously that's a too simplistic of a view. Defenses have scouted the Spurs and shifted how they play them. But I do think a contributing factor was just, more talented, more veteran teams rounding themselves into form a little bit after the first few games of the year.
Yeah, some of their veterans have also not stayed healthy. They've been without, like, Josh Richardson has missed a bunch of times. Zach Collins, who's never really been healthy, hasn't reversed that trend this year. So
tragedy.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about our keepers first. We're going to talk about the players that we really like. And I don't know who you're going to say. You don't know who I'm going to say. But before I mention my players, I do want to preface this. I don't think the Spurs currently have their number one offensive option guy. He's not on the roster. Hopefully he comes to the Spurs within the next couple of drafts, but he doesn't exist. So I'm not looking at any of these players as, can they be the number one option? The answer is no, in all likelihood. But they do have some players who can be really good role players, or ancillary pieces. And the first of those I do want to mention is Devin Vassell, who's been having a breakout season this year. Shooting over 40%
clear cut
three.
The Spurs' best player.
Really good 3-and-D player. He's not a guy you can put the ball in his hands and ask him to break down a defense for you. That's not really his game. He's going to play off ball most of the time. But switchable defensive player, really, really solid offensively, just has a sweet stroke. I will say he has been a better option with the ball in his hands than Keldon Johnson, just by virtue of not making as many mistakes as Keldon has been this year. So that's not saying he's ever going to be a primary ball handler or even a secondary ball handler, but that is good to see, because you want your role players to not be, just standstill shooters and nothing else. You do want to be able to put the ball in their hands on occasion. Yeah.
Disappointing year so far for Keldon Johnson. Obviously, he's getting way more defensive attention than he's ever faced before in his life, but or at least his NBA career, but really fallen off from a decent finisher at the rim to a pretty poor one. The floater counter hasn't been there at all for him this year, where that was a strong tool for him last year, and he's not shooting well from outside. So hopefully he can turn it around, because right now nothing seems to be working out for him as an offensive focal point. And
is he a keeper for you?
Keldon Johnson?
Yeah.
23 years old, 6'5" power forward who doesn't actually finish that well around the rim. I'm gonna say
he's a wing.
He's a wing, but I mean, the way that he's played in San Antonio has been as this rim, this he plays a lot of bully ball. He he can shoot, and I'm not saying but he's more of he feels like a kind of old school face up four in the way his offensive style works. I think he's a good NBA player. I don't think he's a building block. I think he's a fourth or fifth starter type on a good team.
Yeah, he did sign a contract extension this offseason. 4 years, hair over $80 million. Which, if that's a high-level starter, that's an awesome contract, or a fair value contract. It will be an awesome contract when the salary cap spikes. But if he's not, that is, an overpay. Keldon Johnson's a better player than he's shown this year, and that's just the lack of talent around him. Anyone on this Spurs team would be a worse version than what they are right now, because this is... It's Spurs and Houston Rockets in terms of teams that have the biggest deficit of playmaking on their rosters right now.
Oh, I think it's the Spurs by a country mile. And I mean, Houston has their own issues, and they definitely don't have high quality playmaking, but they at least have players who project as playmakers. players who are supposed to be
Yeah.
playmakers. Like
They have
they've
athletic guards who can handle the ball, just aren't great
yeah.
at it yet.
They also have Alperen Sengun, Shengun, but like who's the best playmaker on the Spurs? We said this to start the season. We're like, I guess it's like Trey Jones or.
Well, yeah, it is Trey Jones. Trey Jones is a good passer. The problem is he is too small and not athletic enough to pressure the rim, and he can't shoot. So
Yeah.
that really limits his ceiling. Like, yeah, he is a good passer. Like he has good court vision. He just doesn't have the other things that are necessary to be a playmaker that go in tandem with passing.
But yeah, back to Devin Vassell. I'm a big fan. He was number 3 on my big board in the 2020 draft. Not that I saw him as a definite star that year or anything like that, but it was like I just saw a very projectable high level two-way wing, and I think that's an incredibly valuable thing.
One of the rare Florida State prospects who has a jump shot.
Yeah. He's a little bit smaller than I remember thinking he was. Like
he's like 6'5".
Yeah, like I feel like around the draft they were listing him as more like a kind of 6'7" big wing sort of type, and he's not.
Yeah.
But he does. He's long. He's athletic.
He's got long arms. Yeah.
And he's really showing how well his skill set sort of projects. So I think I think any team could add Devin Vassell right now, and I'm not saying he would average 20 points per game on any team and get the same number of looks, but I think he could play efficiently in that role as this sort of like off ball shooter athlete type. And that's a great thing to have. So Devin Vassell is a keep. What would you say about Keldon Johnson?
I'm going to save Keldon Johnson for the next section.
Okay. Then I think the next person to talk about is Jeremy Sochan. Yeah.
I am super excited about Jeremy Sochan. And he's the reason why I've watched a couple of Spurs games this year.
Oh.
I mean, one of them was
if you're listening, Jeremy
Blazers,
Sochan,
but...
you've created a Spurs watcher, so kudos to you.
I love Jeremy Sochan as a prospect. It's early and there's a lot of questions still, but my favorite prospects are the guys that have like a clear, like elite skill, like elite, or at least, obviously going to become that just from the way they play. And that for me is perimeter defense on ball. Jeremy Sochan he's got really long arms. He's got really quick feet. He's got a slithery body that can get around screens. He gave Damian Lillard more trouble than any player I've seen in years. And this was early on in the season before Dame got hurt and was cooking everyone else, but he couldn't get a shot off against Sochan. And like, who knows how he's going to fare? Like his frame is obviously going to change as he grows and fills out. So who knows how like the post defense and the rebounding, which are kind of the big questions with him defensively right now, who knows how those are going to progress in the future. But like the perimeter defense is nasty and you need guys like that on your roster. So he still can't shoot, but he does have nice touch around the basket. So I think there's potential there. He's not as stiff offensively.
A 6'9" rookie with long arms and the like hustle and effort to be proficient at screen navigation is like that's not very common. Like even good defensive rookies, screen navigation is usually a major problem for them early years. You only really see like the peskiest, hustliest small guards be at a sort of NBA level as a screen navigator coming in. So Jeremy Sochan, like already, I don't think he's doing it with like smarts or experience, obviously at this point, but just like his motor is so high that he's just like he's just a pesky guy to screen on. He kind of plays like a pesky little 6'2" guard, but he's 6'9",
but
he's long.
Yeah,
and it's a big body, and he plays with a lot of. He looks like he's like confident and and having fun. He doesn't have really any NBA skills, any NBA level skills on offense yet, but he's out there, he's poised, he's moving around as much as possible. Sometimes I see him move into space in the most meaninglessly horrible way, like he'll cut right under the basket. It's like as someone's driving to the basket, or sort of like be in the wrong spot. But on a team like this, him bringing that energy and hustle and physicality, I think bodes extremely well for his future in the NBA. And even if he doesn't become a shooter or become, add a huge NBA skill, we're still looking at like a giant body that moves really well and tries really hard. And that's a definite NBA player. So I'm just as hyped as you on Sohan. He's definitely been what I hoped he would be coming in, like coming into the draft. I don't think he's disappointed. You always wonder with these guys what they will add on offense, and he hasn't answered any of those questions for us besides the aforementioned paint finishing, which I think is, if he wasn't scoring around the rim, I think there'd be bigger questions. But he can play a little bit of the short role. What if they still had like Dejounte Murray this year, and they were running more? He was getting to run more pick and rolls with someone who could like find him on those. What if Trey Jones wasn't his only option on those? Like he might have a better NBA role off the bat. So we now have 2 keepers in San Antonio.
Did you have anyone else on your keeper list other than the aforementioned Sohan and Devin Vassell?
No.
Because I got one more.
All right, hit me up.
This is my off the top rope pick. Really surprised that the Philadelphia 76ers didn't retain him, but I really like Charles Bassey as just an energy, like crazy energy big man coming off the bench. Like, I want to clarify, not a starting role. I do not think this is the Spurs 5 of the future, but if you can sign him to a nice contract where he's making less than $8 million a year, I really like him as a backup big man.
Well, if they end up trading Jakob Poeltl, he will be the Spurs center of the present.
That's true. Yeah.
And earlier I said Devin Vassell was the best player on the Spurs, but I think it's probably Jakob Poeltl.
Yeah, considering how much defensive value he adds.
I think if you took Devin Vassell and Jakob Poeltl and put them on, the Miami Heat, or if you put them on Atlanta or Boston Raptors or something like that, the Toronto Raptors, they would love to get Yak back. Jakob Poeltl would be the more likely one to start and the more likely one to bring high level value on day one, even though Devin Vassell is obviously a lot younger and a better prospect. But
he was half of the Kawhi trade package, so obviously the Spurs valued him pretty highly a few years ago.
Yeah, and I mean he's played great basketball for them. He just sort of wasn't really on a useful or reasonable timeline when they had LaMarcus Aldridge, and they didn't want to play those two together, and so. But he was awesome with Dejounte Murray last year as a pick and roll partner. So I think he's got, like offensive value. He's a decent decision maker. And I do think teams are actually going to chase him, like playoff teams. I think the Spurs are trying to set up a bidding war and try to extract as much value out of Jakob Poeltl as possible. And he's, still an awful free throw shooter, but at least he's over 50% again. Barely, but but it's there. Kind of now.
Like if Jakob Poeltl was on a more a franchise that was more in the public eye, he would probably be like more renowned for how terrible his free throw shot A looks and B is results wise. We've covered all the players that we think are keepers for the Spurs. Let's move into, do you got any maybes, or do you just have players that you don't necessarily see as blocks for this team?
Yeah, that's who are some good maybes on the Spurs? Like, because I can see a lot of these guys being NBA rotation level players. I just don't see anyone like, the Spurs better make sure they hang on to. They're also more veteran, they're more veteran heavy than Orlando, right? They've got 6 or 7 guys over the age of who are older than 25 and are firmly not prospects. So and then we haven't seen Blake Wesley play. We haven't seen Dominic Barlow. I'm not into Romeo Langford. So it's like, yeah, I feel like you're just asking me, is Trey Jones going to be an NBA starter? Like, is Trey Jones better than, does he have, like, I feel like he tops out at his brother, right? Like, that's his ceiling. We've seen the ceiling of Trey Jones, and it's also named Jones.
I think Tyus Jones would be like a best case scenario.
Yeah.
For Trey Jones.
Yeah.
For me, the maybes are just, Wesley and Branham. We haven't seen him play much. Branham's played more, but, they're rookies, very little NBA experience. Wesley probably more so than Branham showed more of an NBA-ish game at Notre Dame. Being a guy who could score, you could put the ball in his hands and he could get a bucket for you. So I think he'd really need to develop some playmaking to be a valuable NBA rotation player, but that could happen. So not gonna pass judgment on either of them as of yet.
I mean, I think, and I don't want to get into the controversy and the scandal around that, but I feel like not enough people talk about how kind of what a sneaky blow it was for the Spurs. They lost Joshua Primo for nothing. 19-year-old promising, like shooting guard, just, and he's, lottery pick. For them to lose a lottery pick for nothing is just like, again, I have no interest in talking about what happened there, but that, like, just from a franchise perspective, that's a complete loss of a number 12 pick overall. So that's a little bit of a setback for the Spurs. So you were talking about the draft capital before. It's great that they got so many draft picks out of Dejounte Murray, because they're going to need to rebuild stuff, and they feel like a team that we're not really going to know much about until we see who they draft this year. Because right now there's not a lot of shape to go off of. We're talking about Devin, Vassell, and Jeremy Sohan. You got your 3 and your 4, or your 2 and your 3, like decent level prospects there. It's no Paolo and Franz. And it's
neither of them are probably going to be your number 1 or number 2. Like, Sohan could be your best option to defend the other team's best player. So defensive go-to guy, that's valuable. You need that to be a good team. But they don't have their best offensive player, or probably even their second best offensive player on the team yet.
I agree. Do you think we'll see Greg Popovich coach in the NBA playoffs ever again?
I'm not going to. I don't want to be too morbid here, but I think that just entirely depends on how long he continues to have the health to be a coach.
Yeah, I mean, I assume that he will. I feel it's more likely he'll retire before it's like a matter of health urgency or something like that. But more like, he's 75. He's not going to coach. He's 73. He's not going to coach till he's 80. Let's assume he's going to retire before he's 80. So
he could, but I could also see it being like 78.
That's what I mean. So
for another couple of years,
on a 5-year timeline, do you think the Spurs can put together a playoff team again?
If they get Victor Wembanyama, yes.
Maybe, yeah. Rooting for you, Spurs.
If they draft a generational talent, sure, why not?
Yeah,
but
it's worked for them before, twice.
Yeah, but that's a roll of the dice, or roll of the lottery balls, as it were. So, who do you think this team has for guys that they could potentially trade or move on from this season?
Yeah, well, I mean, we already talked about my boy Jakob Poeltl. In terms of other guys with trade value, I mean, I don't think Doug McDermott gets you a first-round pick. I don't think Josh Richardson gets you a first-round pick. Now, because you package those guys together, I don't see, like, I think Jakob Poeltl is their play. I definitely think they can trade Doug McDermott and Josh Richardson. I think there is some interest for those guys who are trying to fill out their rotations. Josh Richardson, if you want to add a bit of backcourt defense, and Doug McDermott if you need shooting. But I don't see how you're drumming up extra interest for them. So Jakob Poeltl represents a major upgrade to any team's backline defense. And like so many, like, the Warriors would love to get their hands on Jakob Poeltl. Like, the Pelicans, even Boston would be stoked. Obviously, you mentioned the Raptors and the Nets. Like I think that low key there's going to be teams are circling him, and they all think like maybe we can get him for cheap. But it's like I think it's going to come out like no, there's 9 teams lining up for Jakob Poeltl, and I think they're going to get a first round pick out of that.
I think they can get 2. And the reason
2 first round
is...
picks for Jakob Poeltl. All right.
No, sorry.
Let's
Not
get
for
it,
Jakob
Yak.
Poeltl.
Oh.
I meant during the trade deadline. I think they can get at least 2. And the reason why is, I mean, Doug McDermott and Josh Richardson's skill set are not necessarily worth that, but the Spurs have another asset you didn't mention, and that's $25 million in unused cap space. So they can take on just about anyone, or they can be a facilitator in a 3-team trade for just about any team that needs some extra flexibility to make a trade happen. And historically, we've seen contending teams are very often willing to package a first-round pick to make that happen.
Yeah, they also, I mean, it's important to note that Doug McDermott and Josh Richardson are like the perfect size contracts to make that happen. They're both making, $12, $13 million a year. And that's put those 2 together, bring back a bad contract and you're good to go. So yeah, maybe they can get, also Zach Collins making $7 million a year and probably not part of their long-term plan. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they position that flexibility, because you also don't look at these guys and be like, well, the Spurs want to keep them for like, I can't really see a reason for that. Yeah, Poeltl's also a free agent, so they don't even, they want like there's just absolutely even if they loved Jakob Poeltl, they'd still have to look themselves in the mirror and be like, what are we doing? Yeah, any final Spurs thoughts?
Trey Jones is a free agent at the end of the season. I'd explore the trade market on him. I mean, I don't want to be too harsh to Trey Jones. We talked.
Yeah, low key Trey Jones hater.
We talked up his playmaking chops earlier, but I'm not interested in 6-foot guards who can't shoot. So, but
yeah. Well, I would love him in Minnesota right now, to be honest.
Like, yeah, there we go. Like
Minnesota would probably trade real things for Trey Jones.
There are teams who need a player like that, but a young team that's just trying to rebuild is not one of them. So,
yeah,
I think that's a decent trade asset.
Yeah, I agree.
So you must have been pretty invested in the video to make it to the end. If you want to watch more of them, we have plenty more. You can check out another one right here. And we'll see you next time.